They just announced last week that they closed through June 21st, and so I don't know if they're going to be open or not. So,
Are we all set, Mr. Pufall?
we are.
All right. I will call to order the Personnel Policy Curriculum Committee meeting, which was duly noticed on March 21st, 2021 through May 21st. May 21st, 2021 through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 1984. Safety message. I prepared it on my phone, sorry. Mine is getting ready for summer break, which is crazy that it's already next week. We're done with school, wrapping up school. So for the summer, just a reminder for the kids to make sure they wear a helmet, learn the dangers of drowning and supervise children near water, drink lots of water and wear sunscreen. And then for like mine safety, I just felt like my Brady came home the other day with so much excitement about 2 books he found in the free little library. So for just keep their minds reading this summer and go visit those free little libraries or the library, do online, because reading hard copy versus digital has been proven better. There's some information about that on the early literacy site. So I would just encourage more reading over this summer just to keep our help keep our kids, their vocabularies up and on their grades up. Does anybody else have any safety message, or are you okay? We're okay. All right. A motion to adopt the May 24th, 2021 agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Lisa, second by Liz. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. All right, now with a presentation on the Talented and Gifted program, Mrs. DeGraff.
Yes. Good evening or afternoon. I don't really know what it is. Tonight at PPC, we have Stacy Peterson here with us, and she's currently the principal at Roosevelt. She's been in our district as a teacher, an instructional coach, and principal. And along with her role as principal at Roosevelt School, she's also our district talented and gifted coordinator, which also has one of our challenge programs there. And so it has been many years since we've had the conversation about our challenge program and talented gifted education in the school district of Janesville, so that we thought that it was important to provide an update on that and a little bit too just about the historical background of how the program started and how it's evolved. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Stacy and have her go ahead and share for us.
Am I live here? I make sure you can hear me. Thank you. And thanks for having me tonight. I'm very pleased to kind of share a little bit, as Allison said, just kind of history, some overview, touch on a few things, and hopefully answer any questions. I am obviously very proud to take on the role as the coordinator and have an investment being at Roosevelt and have been for a while. So I'm pretty proud of the work that people have done a long time before me to carry on the tradition in Janesville. So I'm going to move on to just the way background there of the history. Janesville's been serving our TAG kids, talented and gifted kids, since the 70s. But truly in 1987, there was a state standard that was put in place that talked about school boards needing to provide access to programming for kiddos that are identified in gifted and talented, and then a way of establishing their identification and the categories that they named. So that was more officially put in place after Janesville had been already discussing and serving kiddos that way, but that's a compliance piece, obviously. And so I wanted to share the vision statements because along with the state standard, we have a lot of vision statements that really speak to the program and what we strive for with our kids. So there's a lot on here. Essentially, it's about programming and meeting the needs. As you may know, with kiddos that are in the talented and gifted range, a lot comes with that, just with their learning style. The social emotional piece is mentioned in there along with the academics. We really have strived for serving a diverse population and getting kind of those underachievers that may not stand out strong in this area. So we pride ourselves in doing that, and I'll touch on that later. And obviously, the enrichment and acceleration pieces that are in there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But truly, we wanted a well-rounded program. When you talk about meeting the diverse needs of this type of learner, we want to make sure we're touching on everything that's needed to provide them the best experience they need based on their academics. And so that's kind of the background of how we got to where we are and a little bit about the what and why. The who is the TAG advocate. So we know that we have a program, and part of it is who carries that out for our students, because that's a big task when you talk about all of our buildings in Janesville. So TAG advocates are the people in the building. We have at least 2 in each building that serve our students directly. So those are full-time teachers that are appointed by the principals who work with me. We meet regularly to walk through the identification process, to facilitate any parent communications that need to go on, to follow through the plans, and talk about the programming in the district so we're consistent with that and following our vision statements and the standards. So those are the people that work through all of that. And like I said, we do meet regularly as a group, in sometimes whole group, so it's K-12, and sometimes in our elementary, middle, or high school groups, depending on the needs. So through that, we do meet the majority of the student needs in the area of TAG in the regular education classrooms through the TAG advocates and the support systems there, both identifying and then bringing forward their programming based on their needs. So that works generally. Then, as you can expect, we do have kiddos that fall even deeper in that need pool. If those needs can't be met within an advocate program in the general ed setting, then they fall outside of either needing the acceleration, and that can be subject grade or participation in the TAG Challenge Magnet program. So I want to talk a little bit about that because that has a lot of history, obviously. For over 35 years, we've been servicing kiddos through this model of our Challenge program for our intellectually gifted kiddos. So again, there's a lot of content on here for you to read later, but essentially it's those really top 3 to 5% kiddos that fall outside of needing more than we can offer in the general ed setting because their needs intellectually are just so broad. And sometimes even subject or whole grade acceleration isn't enough. And so we have this, I call it the gem of Janesville. When I talk to parents, they're not familiar that we offer this kind of programming because it's only offered in certain areas. So again, we really want to put the kids in there that need this and qualify for it based on, again, that reading and math core need. And it gives them the opportunity, and I'll go into this a little bit more, to be with their same age peers, but their same age intellectual peers. And that's for a large amount of time, not just that pull out for enrichment with the TAG advocates or other volunteers and things like that. It really gives a deep sense of programming for those kiddos. Some of the benefits we've found over time with this longstanding program is that we do have other students from other areas open enroll into Janesville to participate in that kind of programming if their child has that need. And with the magnet program, it is always a parental choice. It's never we're trying to make you do something that doesn't fit. Just like anything else, the parent is in charge of that programming, and they can opt in or out. And we have recognized over the years the transportation has provided some hiccups and hurdles for parents. Sometimes it's just leaving a homeschool that they're really connected to, and we would never want them to have that override. So we have the parents very involved in that decision making and try to give them all of the information that they need in order to make the best choice. And sometimes it does boil down to a parent choosing a comfort level in the social emotional needs over the academic, and that's totally their call. And as I said, with the screening process, we do that in both 2nd and 5th grade. So we use the COGAT tool, which is Common and Gifted Programming, that really does look at a lot of things. And this is where we catch kind of those under-identified kids, because there's some nonverbal pieces that we can really get some diverse learners, and we'll catch them, so to say, on the COGAT, sometimes in second grade, and then we do it again in fifth grade. So with that developmental change, we're getting a glimpse of them again. So there's different parts of that test that really give us a sense of their needs. And then obviously we look at other test scores. We have a teacher survey. Things like that are all factored into whether or not they would be a good match for the program. And then the invite goes out. And again, it's a parental choice if they participate in that program or not. So just a little bit of history, even deeper with that. We did start the program in Janesville in 1983 with just the fourth and fifth grade. It's been all over. It was at Harrison, it was at Van Buren, it's been at Roosevelt. Currently it's at Madison, Washington, and Roosevelt at the elementary, Edison at the middle school, and Franklin as well. So we're transitioning some of those programs into Roosevelt and Edison. And in 2012, we did add the third grade. So that came out of just knowing that some of the second grade students were really displaying some of those needs, and there was a lot of subject or whole group acceleration conversation. So that was when we added third grade into the challenge program. And with the program, we've participated in a lot of things. The Javits cluster grouping through Purdue. Marcia Gentry was part of a research project on how we can identify our kids and how that benefits all of the students. So it was about not only finding those under-identified kiddos, it was also about how do we best serve all of our kids? So part of that study brought out that if we do invite into the challenge program, it actually benefits the kiddos who are just under that level, because now they have an opportunity to sort of blossom and rise to the occasion. And her study was really great about bringing out that information for us. So again, they can emerge in that high achievement once those kiddos for challenge are put in that programming. Another question and conversation I have a lot with people is just about kind of data and things that surround that, because when kiddos will come over to a program from a homeschool, I put it as FAY data. It's the full academic year. So it does take a whole year before any data is counted in to a homeschool. And so I think the question is, what does that do for a school that houses the program? And so that's a conversation I'll have with people about that. Truly, at Roosevelt, we've disaggregated a lot of data to find out, because we want to with the subgroups, as all schools do, where is the growth with our kiddos, where is it with the challenge program and whatnot. And what we have found is some of those high achieving learners actually don't grow very much in that curve of learning. It's our kiddos that are needing the most growth that make it in the lower areas of that. So it doesn't necessarily affect the data, is my overall comment on that. So again, we've done a lot of studies with that. One other study that was done as an external review study to see how the challenge program is working or not. And this is one we share with parents when we do our orientation session. And it shows parents, I think, that, the question always is, well, why participate in it? What is it really going to do for my child? It sounds good. And this is the data that came out of that external study to show that students that do qualify and attend versus those who qualify and do not attend, they still do well, don't get me wrong, but the qualified that do attend, you can see by the scores over time, it increases that. So it just allows them to grow a bit more, and that's really the whole basis of the program is wanting to give them that growth just like we give everybody else. And this is one way that it has proven successful in doing that. So this is something we do share with parents. And this is also something right from our parent orientation about, what does it offer that we can't do in a regular classroom? And this is just it. You're all day, every day, all of your peers are your intellectual peers versus a little cluster group of kiddos in an enrichment. It's accelerated in the curriculum. So it's a year to 2 years beyond in all areas for our kids. And you're with trained teachers who've had training and experience in this type of learner. And then my closing one is just more information, again, that we share with parents about gifted kiddos that, just like our special ed students in the district, there's a population that has a need. Gifted kids also have a need, and so this is really small print as I'm looking at it. I apologize, but it's just a little bit about how there are differing abilities. And I think the assumption or the myth with that is, gifted kids are just fine in the regular room because they just function because they are gifted. And so we talk about how it's important to give them the chance to blossom too, and really that we want them to thrive as much. And we can see from that comparative analysis that they do if it's the right fit for them. And that's truly what we want to offer. And I think it's, again, I always call it the gem of Janesville for this type of learner. It's just a long-standing tradition that has proven successful for this small population. And albeit small for the challenge program, it's wider for talents in general for all of our kids, K-12. So that's what we're really striving for, is to always be better at finding, identifying, and programming for those kids appropriately so that all of the students in Janesville have their needs met academically. So I can certainly answer questions, or if you wanted to add more to that, Allison, but that's a really brief summary. In a few minutes I could go on, but...
Yes, no, thank you, Stacy. That was a great summary of that. And so we'll see if anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to share.
You made a comment about how some people come out of the district for that. Do you have any data as to how many, and how do people find out about that then? Because just curious on that.
No, that's a great question. We've talked about it for years, and I know quite a few years ago we had talked about potential of marketing more for that, and that was part of the growth process when it was added over at Madison Elementary. I don't have the number of how many students have open enrolled. That's not something that's been tracked over the years. I know just for my experiences of talking with parents who have done that, and my experience has been word of mouth.
Yeah.
My friends did this. I was literally walking on the trail one Sunday and ran into a family who knew about Roosevelt and had heard, and that kind of thing. It's literally word of mouth for the most part in terms of programming, but that's always been how do we get that out to reach that need for people and to potentially bring in those open enrollments.
Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
And many people don't have those trail conversations.
No.
So you're missing some of the students that might benefit from it. So
Correct.
That's why I was just interested in that.
Yep, that's fair.
Hi. Am I on? Yeah, I am. Okay. So I think piggybacking to what you said, Lisa, in terms of awareness, I feel like I am a pretty aware TAG individual. I have family members that went through the magnet program, probably were some of the very young students in that starting program. I have a student that has been tagged as well in my family. And I learned things today that I never knew about the program.
Okay.
Having a student in it, not in the magnet. I would like to see this information with descriptions more readily available to the families in our district, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what TAG in Janesville is, how you qualify, who qualifies, and I think there is a general understanding, probably a misunderstanding, that if you're not in the magnet, you're not in the TAG program. And I mean that, and if you decline moving, you're not getting TAG resources. And from my understanding, that is not necessarily the case. So I just think even families that have students that have been invited to the magnet for the intellectual giftedness are not understanding what this program is. And, I have a student at Marshall who's been in TAG, and that's been a really nice fit for her. But she was identified a little bit later. I think it was in 5th grade. And it was thanks to a very involved and dedicated staff member that really noticed some gifts that maybe were not being identified or noticed or whatever. So I think that would be very beneficial. And another thing, I'm noticing information about the TAG advocates and that there's 2 per building. Those are also, I don't feel are shared. Like, I don't know who they are in per building unless maybe maybe at Marshall I've been told, but in other buildings, I might not know that. And even if you have a TAG student, do you know who the advocates are? I think that would be a very helpful piece for families, just in general, to know who the TAG advocate, because there might be a student that isn't rising to the top on the COAG test, but may have some gifts that could warrant some closer evaluation. And we all know that parents are very much a part of the educational process. So those are just, I guess, some feedback that I have. And one more thing, in terms of the data, this is something that I've paid a lot of attention to. And I am so glad to know that it's desegregated in terms of when you're looking at it in a school environment and teachers and classrooms. But I am concerned that it's not always desegregated for the public, because if you look at state test scores or report cards, and a general person is moving to the community and they're looking at one school versus another, they're not understanding that if one school has a charter magnet for talented and gifted individuals, that those scores are highly skewing the report card for everyone else. So that's something I don't know how we can appropriately share that, but that is something that I see even in neighborhoods where people might be opting between one school or another, thinking that it's a better school, and it just so happens that there's perhaps a different magnet school inside it. So those are just my thoughts from after your really informative presentation.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I know one of the things Allison and I are talking about is kind of a 3 to 5 year plan in terms of TAG advocates is one of the main strands of that plan to really lay out, and this is helpful information for us, of how do we develop that and get that to parents.
Wonderful.
And how can we beef up, so to say, the TAG advocate role, just as you said, to inform parents more so about the learners.
Keep me in the loop for that, because it's something that definitely I've just seen how things pan out. And I know that for my own student, when she did get the enrichment versus when she wasn't getting the enrichment because of a very strong advocate at a school, when perhaps there wasn't one previously, it made a world of difference. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing that you were showing with those test scores and how a student can really shine when they're getting the right opportunities to shine. So, anything that we can do to get more advocacy at all of the schools, I am excited to hear about that. So thank you for your work on this.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. And one of the pieces of that too is kind of monitoring that progress, just like we would any other learner with a need that we're watching and identifying. So that's another piece is how do we monitor that progress to know that we're being effective or not, and what can we do then if it's not effective. So
great.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, and I agree. We can, those are conversations that we can have with principals too. Like, how are we letting parents know, who those advocates are in every building? Because we have families every year that, with the COGAD and students who qualify, many that choose to go to Roosevelt and many that choose to stay within their building. And then we can talk about how we help provide programming and support for those students that choose to stay. As Stacy mentioned, because many feel connected to their home school. And so, we want to meet their needs wherever they are. And so the more we can, be transparent with our families and let them know that information, I agree, the more helpful it is in our community. So thank you for sharing that as well.
Thank you for presenting this, Stacy. It's really good information. Now you have some advocates here for the program. I guess this is really interesting. It's interesting to me because I have 2 kids that are TAG math, and I am very informed at all of my schools of what's being done. So that's interesting that your experience is different. So just take that, like, I think there's strength in advocates maybe across that might be some feedback for you. So, because I know what Craig's doing and I know what Kennedy's doing for the math. So, but to that point, they just took the STAR test in elementary last week. And the feedback I got from my son's teacher was, because he was 99, now he went to 98. She said that the resources this school year have been harder. It's been harder to give him those opportunities, those tag math opportunities. We aren't tag magnet, but we're not challenge magnet, but we're tag math. Those opportunities have been harder to come by for during COVID. Is that going to be fixed for next year? I guess that's my concern. I was like, wow, shame on us as a board then if we missed an opportunity to service the needs of kids, because I'm living this firsthand that we failed a segment of kids, or didn't do as good as we could have. I wouldn't say failed, but didn't do as good as we probably could have. Did you see that? And is there things being done to address that?
Well, one thing I would add too, it's hard with I think there were some things definitely due to COVID where there were less opportunities where kids it was harder to be in small groups, especially in the very beginning when we were really, I think as we gradually moved through the year and understood COVID a little more and what we could and couldn't do. But kids, I feel like we're always getting, solid instruction, and it was really actually less interruption because we had less distractions that could even come into the building. And I do think with STAR, it's hard because, I've experienced it with my own children as well. Even when it's COVID or not COVID, we do have anytime you're doing a norm referenced tests are much more difficult. You're going to go up and down because it's also based nationally on where students are at. And so I think you're going to see slight increases and dips, and that's somewhat normal as long as you're in the end trajectory is going forward. So I don't know if it was specifically just due to that or just some of the natural, progression of some of our assessments that happened on nationally normed tests as well. So, I've experienced that throughout even pre-COVID. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
A 99th versus a 98th percentile is not if
Right,
you told me
no.
you'd gone from the 99th percentile to the 78th percentile, then I'd be going, oh,
Right.
that's
Right.
that's a problem.
It was just that her message was
That's
specific
test
to,
variability, and so.
right. It was just that her message was specific to there have been less opportunities
Yeah.
for that because of COVID.
Yeah, and some of the competitions did not happen because of
Right.
COVID, and things that we typically do have, especially
Yeah,
math
challenges.
seems to have a
Math
ton of those
competitions.
extras, and those were all canceled, so.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's very good.
Thank you.
All right, because there's any other questions, or are we okay? All right, the Achievement Gap Reduction Report by Mrs. Graff and Ms. Moisen. And Ashley Wright.
Yes, so just a quick introduction. Yes, we have our Achievement Gap Reduction presentation here. We have Ashley Wright from Wilson and Kristen Moisen from Jackson, our principals today, and they serve two of our elementary schools that have some of the highest poverty rates in our district. And so we've been receiving the Achievement Gap Reduction, and every 5 years we have to kind of renew that grant, and so we're at that 5-year point again. But we always, at the mid-year and end of the year, inform the board of, as part of receiving this grant, how the grant is helping impact our data in helping our students of poverty in our district as well. So we thought it was important as we are at the point where we are renewing the grant again, that we update the board a little bit about AGR as well as where we are at in our district with our data as well as a result of AGR. So I will let Ashley and Kristen go ahead and update us on that information.
The mouth. There we go. Thank you so much for being here. As Allison had shared this evening, that we are up to do our renewal of our grant, and I'll share a little bit of history. If you can click the slide to the next slide for me, that'd be great. So a little overview. SAGE is the original grant that was established back in 1996-97, and that was Department of Public Instruction started with the SAGE grants, and that was to increase student achievement in schools with poverty, and specifically schools that had a 50% or greater poverty figure. And schools in the school district of Janesville, Jackson, and Wilson were participating in that SAGE grant, and they've been doing that for many years. We typically, both of us, also have a poverty level that's typically over 85% in each of our buildings consistently every year as well. So when we did that, it was back in 2015-16 with Acts 53 and 73. We were asked to implement strategies to add low-income students in the areas of reading and math and increase their academic achievement and to reduce those achievement gaps. And so following with those, with that act, or both of those acts, no new schools were able to apply. So when we look at the AGR switch from SAGE to AGR, no new schools are able to apply. Districts that have schools participating in SAGE could be a part of the AGR grant that was written. So both of us were on our renewal years or getting up to our renewal years, and we renewed in our 2017-18 year, which now brings us up to this year. But it is an every 5-year grant here going forward. Jackson wrote an extension and then put both of our buildings on the same cycle. So we would be together every year as a district versus one of us being 1 year off. Along with that, the requirements different from SAGE to AGR is we are required to report annually. We are to do a mid-year report with our academic achievement, studying and following children in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade in both areas of reading and math. We do a mid-year update as well as the end-of-the-year report that we send into DPI. We also at that time are asked to identify the instructional strategies that we are using with our students in our classrooms as well. So that's a part of our annual reporting piece. And then as an AGR school, we are asked to follow one of 3 types of settings, and we can choose to do one-on-one tutoring by a licensed teacher as a model. We are able to choose instructional capacity for our teachers and supporting teachers in their professional development and coaching. And then we also can do the 1 teacher per 18 students, so that reduced size classroom, or you could choose 2 teachers to 30 students in a classroom. Both Jackson and Wilson have selected that 18-to-1 reduced size classroom, which has been beautiful in each of our classrooms to be able to see the ability to make small groups smaller, to really individualize instruction for students. And then we also receive Title I supports in our buildings, so our Title I teachers are also able to go in and support children in those classrooms. So that's been very successful for us. So besides reporting annually, we do receive funding as well for that helps participate and pay for our teaching and staff. Next slide.
So as Kristen said, we do receive a financial impact for the district. It does tend to go up a little bit each year. So this is what we were allocated for this year. So as you can see, we were allocated $26,2105 for each eligible low-income child. And during this past school year, we received $597,666. And then we did break it down there by school. And again, it is per pupil. So Jackson has more pupils than Wilson, which is what that higher number indicates. Additionally, go ahead. In addition to the financial impact, we wanted to share just a little bit about our academic impact. As Kristen said, we do have to provide that annual board report twice a year where there is a ton more data in there. We break it down by grade level, by reading, by math, in many different areas. We just wanted to provide a snapshot here this evening of what's called our student growth percentile. And as Allison just commented on previously, it is a normed test. So this shows where our students are growing, reference to other students as well. So as you can see, there's some pretty significant growth occurring in our kindergarten through third grade classes.
I would add it's the rate of growth over a time period. So it's like 1 year to the next. And a child, we look at an SGP of a 50 being what you would see an average student, or between that 40 and 60 being in an average. And to close achievement gaps, we really do need to be shooting for higher than a 50 in our areas. So you can see we really have been able to show that we're beginning those closing achievement gaps. These are mid-year scores, so these are our winter scores this year in comparison to for our individual children or grade level groups for reading and math. Early literacy in kindergarten and first grade, and then in second, reading and math. We are finishing up, as you were saying, Michelle, assessment within our buildings. I do have some preliminary end-of-year data. I know Ashley does as well, but we don't have all of those completed, or we would have included that. My preliminary data looks fabulous, as I'm sure Ashley's does as well. We'll see another nice increase to those SGP scores at the end of the year.
Thank
Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead, Lisa.
Since you've been starting this, is there, it's only, I think back on the state aid. It's so, not sad that when they switch from the, SAGE to this program, that they didn't grandfather more schools in. I'm sure that's due to budgetary issues. But have you, been doing this for years, and obviously there's attrition, but with some of your teachers, not every classroom that does have a lower poverty that's not able to be in this type of program and have that 18-to-1 ratio, are there any lessons learned that are shared with other elementary teachers to be able to maybe have some impact, even though they're not necessarily having the 18-to-1 classroom ratio, that they're able to share with their peers across the district so that they can maybe have additional tools in their toolbox as to how they can work with students, even though they don't get this opportunity, I should say?
I would say as elementary principals, we do share activities that we're using and instructional things that we use across the district. Some of the things that I see happening in other buildings that are very similar to what we're doing are being able to have boost time or win time opportunities for children, where we're looking at doing response to intervention and working in small group settings. And I see many buildings utilizing their STAR data and breaking out students into small skill groups. And I see that happening across all of our buildings in Janesville. And I think that's something that we've been doing for a long time with small class sizes. And when we're able to have small intervention groups or smaller groups for reading and for math intervention, that's very beneficial for all of our students.
Just as a follow-up, it's almost sad because as a former teacher, it's like, duh, 18-to-1. Like, what does that not tell your state legislatures that low classroom sizes are very effective when you see the data? I know it all comes down to money, but I just think that's sad because every teacher knows that the more attention and individualized instruction you can give, the greater the achievement.
Yeah.
So.
And I wholeheartedly agree and love this year. One of the most positive things that I've seen as a result of being in school all year this year is our reduced size classrooms that we've seen across the district at an elementary level in our classrooms. It's, I think, benefiting all of us as we weather through COVID. This has been a beautiful, I'm glad we're in school, and I love seeing that we have reduced size classes all the way to 5th grade.
Not necessarily, I guess it is a question. So, and I agree with you, Lisa, wholeheartedly about the sadness that that program ended, that no additional schools could join the program. We all know that there are achievement gap issues in all different areas. I'm excited that both of your schools are a part of that program. And I guess I wonder if there's one big picture idea that at Jackson and Wilson that you have seen has been so beneficial from participating in this program. Obviously the funding, but what would it be if talking to the school board that you wish all of the schools in Janesville that you have been able to benefit from, that you could share a message with us going forward?
Are you ready? Do you want to go or do you want me to go? I would reduce size classrooms across the whole district for everyone. I would wholeheartedly support that kindergarten through 5th grade. The opportunity to have less children in a classroom supports all types of things, the social emotional needs children have in classrooms, the academic needs that children have in classrooms. So I would love to have that all the way through 5th grade for all of us. And to me, that's a huge benefit. So I agree with Lisa in that statement.
Your learners are so much different.
The what?
Your learners are so different than they were even 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And when you're able to have less children, you get to know your students better. You develop, not that other classrooms aren't, but it's easier to develop relationships. We see some of our biggest challenges are from transition from 3rd grade to 4th grade. And we go from a class that has 15 or 16 students in there, and then we move up to 28 students in that classroom. And that's a huge difference when we move from 3rd grade to 5th grade or 4th grade.
And that's actually exactly what I was going to say, so I will agree with Kristen. It's those smaller class sizes, and like she said, that is where we tend to see a dip in our academic achievement is when we go from 3rd to 4th and then on up to 5th. Like she said, a lot of times students come with a variety of different gaps, not just academic, and those don't necessarily go away when you get into 4th grade and have 25, 28 kids in your classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it, and the message has been received.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies, for presenting. That was really good information. All right. Moving on to 1.6, review Neola draft policies and consider moving to full board for adoption. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Liz, you'll see AGR usually on consent on the big meeting agendas, just so you know when they were mentioning those 2 times a year reports. So, all right, 1.6, review the Neola draft policies. We got these last week, one day to review because there are so many. Most of them are pretty basic. Were there any discussion points? The one that I worked on a little bit more was just to make sure that policy 1240, the evaluation of the district administrator, was updated just to include the documents that we worked on in March as a board, so that in the formative section for September, December, and June, made it optional. I don't know if you caught that. They board may complete the formative performance. They don't have to. Superintendent Pufall will just kind of be prepared for feedback. It would still be consolidated if board members do send that in to the board clerk for that discussion. But then in June is when everyone does the assessment. Superintendent Pufall will do his self-evaluation, and then we have other reports that we've said that, the Studer-based surveys and that kind of thing that we would get and see. So it's kind of, that's probably the bigger change. Most of them were just straight from Neola and carried over. So any discussion on these, or are we good to move these to the consent agenda, or however Board President Myers would like these on next?
Okay. Thank you for making that catch. I saw that was the one.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of moving these to the full board? Oh, sorry, didn't need a motion. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, thanks Denise. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. And opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thanks. Okay, I have no other announcements or updates. The next meeting, we can look at some dates. Does Monday usually work for you, Liz? And Lisa, it's kind of, so when I have the planning meeting with the administrative team, I'll see what we have for content and timeline wise, and we'll get a couple dates options by you. Okay. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.